No longer content with just stealing a march on top four, Arsenal's campaign to regain the title starts now. This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, the Botman, Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Under the weather, and so trying to take a deep enough breath to get that all out, not working well. Very high fever, along with some other challenging symptoms, is the word I'm looking for, that thankfully are not COVID. So that's good. But turns out you can still be sick. So we're playing hurt today. Let me give you a quick heads up on what we're going to do. Clive and Paul are coming on now. We're going to look ahead to Watford, which will be a comfortable win before we go ahead and slap Liverpool to really reassert ourselves as a title contender. So I'm looking forward to that. After the break, Phil Costa, you may remember him from our Euro Daily episodes or from our Euro Roundup on the Patreon side of things, will join to talk Emile Smith Rowe. He works for Scouted Football. Not Emile Smith Rowe. He works for Arsenal. But Phil Costa works for Scouted Football. And they have an episode out and their cover, an issue out, and their cover boy is Emile Smith Rowe. So we're going to talk about him, why they chose him as the cover boy, his development, and all things Emile Smith Rowe, which I think is perfectly fine. Obviously, a lot of people enjoying the Saka and Smith Rowe chant. So, we're trying to stay topical here. That's what we do. We'll talk a little bit about the AFCON today, too, as well. African Cup of Nations coming up. Going to be disruptive to a lot of teams, not just ours, but it has led to all kinds of crazy rumors, like we're back in for a Danny Ceballos return. I know Paul is very happy about this. He's got his Ceballos shirt dusted off and ready to go, so we will discuss that. That is enough from me, as I am barely keeping it together, so let me introduce Paul. You can find him on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo. I'd do a brighter woohoo, but it doesn't seem in keeping with how crappy you're feeling, so yeah, woohoo. Man.
It's funny, right? Like in the age of COVID, you just forget that you can get regular sick and it can really suck. And it really, really does suck. But, we count our blessings. So Clive's on Twitter, ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Hello. And we did, with all three of us gentlemen here, a rewatch of the first half against Leicester. That was really interesting. And again, a lot of these rewatches, I see something that is not how I remembered it. Really enjoyed it. We had an interesting debate about whether the save on who was it? Iheanacho. The Iheanacho save was actually in some ways better than the free kick save. And the thing that I was interested in watching it again, David Seaman talked on the Arscast about his foot speed, Ramsdale's foot speed, and that Iheanacho save. If you get a chance to watch it again, look at the really super quick choppy steps he takes backwards to get in a position to tip that away. Really interesting. I should also mention the reason Tim is not here is he is doing an interview today that will appear on a podcast next week, and we've got something fun related to that. So he's doing an interview. That audio will be out next week, and we're looking forward to that. Okay, onwards and upwards. Let's start, Clive, just with the Watford game. This is the last sort of moment for us to enjoy what I think is a relatively tranquil period in the schedule. It is Liverpool after this, I believe. So this is the kind of game that unfortunately I think can actually really trip you up because you look past it, you got one eye on Liverpool, you think, oh, we're in good form. But of course, these are the games you absolutely have to win because after this, Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, no big deal there, United away, Everton away, then Southampton home, then West Ham, who are quite good. So it's a period where, we will see after Watford really what the ceiling might be able to be on this season. So do you look at Watford as being the classic sort of, we would call it in America, I think, a trap game, the game you look past ahead of the big games on the horizon, and how do we avoid that?
Yeah, a lot of people are looking for the next game to be convinced. The next game is always the next biggest thing in our lives. And, Leicester was a big game, Villa was a big game, and now we've sort of brushed them off. It's like, oh my God, Watford's a big game. Really, we're on that little index of how convinced are we about all of this. We're enjoying it a lot, but we don't want to get too excited because our emotions will be unprotected, right? And we could get really hurt if we jump on board too much. So I'm watching Watford there in the season. They look so quick. Some of the early results were good. Look so fast. Like, crikey, they're a strong side. Then they fell away, and obviously they do what they always do, which is change the manager, and they lose 2 games. And so now they've got the old elder statesman in there now, and he's and it'd be interesting what happened because they went to Everton and absolutely bopped them late in the game and really shook them. So they have that ability, particularly away from home, to really break and sprint. So very fast with Josh King and Sarr, and I like Sarr a lot. Ismail Sarr, I like him. We don't need him per se, but I like him. It's one of those buys we should have got. That's one of the benefits of being in Europa League. We saw him firsthand. I watched him at Arsenal playing for Rennes. He scored when we went to their place, and he looked really good. I thought, okay, if you're in Europa League, use it for scouting. Well, of course we didn't. we let him go to the club next door, and yeah, he's done pretty well. I'm surprised he stayed with Watford when they went down, but he did. They come back up, and he's still there, which makes me wonder why has not somebody picked him up, particularly Liverpool actually, because he's got his international teammate there in Mane. So I think that's an interesting one. But yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned about their speed. But watching them against Southampton, I think, yeah, we should be all right if we bring our brains with us. I think that's the most important thing. Bring your brains. Don't bring your complacency. Bring your we need to win this brain, and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know how much this affects these players when they're in a good run of form and they see Liverpool on the horizon and it gets in their head. But I think the good news, in a way, is that because we don't have these midweek games, or we have a lot of time to focus on the next opponent, and so we should be really ready for Watford. What I will say about them is that they just have a dreadful defensive record, and I think teams like that, it's really doing us a favor, right? Because the one thing we know is we haven't always created the volume of good chances we'd like to. They seem like they can be gotten at defensively. I don't think, do they have a clean sheet this season? They have one clean sheet, interestingly, against Costa. Actually, nope, that was in the League Cup. So they don't have a clean sheet this season. And Paul, I think, given again that we have the whole week to prepare for them, the worry that you might have that you come back from a midweek game and you overlook this and you're looking ahead to Liverpool, I wouldn't be too worried about it. The funny thing is, if you look at their fixtures, you guys, how about this as a run for Watford next? Arsenal, United, Leicester, Chelsea, Man City. I mean, so they've got a really, really tough task ahead, and it would not surprise me if we are looking at them bottom of the table December 5th after they played Manchester City. So, Paul, how do you feel about this game, approaching it with the professionalism that we need, and the likelihood that we, might have that kind of slow look past them start, or do you think we'll be fired up from the beginning?
I think we'll be fired up from the beginning. Obviously, in this league, almost anybody can give you a surprise, as Everton found out. But look, we should be way too much for them. We're having a good run of form. We start fast these days. There's no reason for this to be any different. We're playing at home with the crowd behind us. They'll want to keep the good vibes, that support from the crowd. So I think we'll hopefully have a very energized start. Look, I haven't watched a ton of Watford because they haven't been great, and it hasn't really called me. But from what I've seen in the last game or so and what I've read on them, Ranieri is turning them into a little bit of a whatever it is, 2016 or so Leicester.
Sit deep and counter.
Yeah. Use their speed, go direct, go a little longer. They had been doing build up from the back. They had been kind of heading up, then heading back with the ball, and just trying to be more of a possession team. So we've just played Leicester. They're actually good at being Leicester. Hopefully Watford aren't good at being Leicester yet, but they're going to use their speed, their speed, their counter-attacking. We should be well primed for this. Obviously, things can go wrong, but you can put an asterisk on anything you say about any predictions on the game. We should be too much for them. It's very important. All these games are important because all games are important in the Premier League. But if we're going to have the season we're crossing our fingers we might have, this is a big game like all the other games we've just played are. We got to get 3 points from this one and go into Liverpool confident. So that's what I'm hoping to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's also unbelievably somehow another international break after this game. So you just you just love having those 2 weeks when you can sit and reflect on a win, and all the episodes are more fun and rewatches are more fun and jokes on Twitter are more fun as opposed to 2 weeks stewing over loss. I will ask you, Clive, are you surprised that neither Benjamin White nor Emile Smith Rowe got a call up?
The Ben White one, I was a bit surprised because He's playing better than Tyrone Mings, who's last seen on the bench in their last game, and Connor Cody, who's last seen. Well, the Wolves are doing quite well in current form, but I think he's a better player than them. But I think they're playing Andorra and San Marino. This is not Italy and Spain. Do you know what I mean? So if he can sit at home and get his legs up, that's fine by me. The most important thing for us this season is to really feel the benefit of not playing midweek. And I got to say, this is something that I really wanted us not playing midweek, but actually I do miss some of the games. I miss some of the action.
Yeah, of course.
But there's a longer goal here for me, and in my little head, I have this little master plan as if I can affect what's actually going to happen. But in my little master plan is, if we are going to jump up into those higher places, we need the serenity of 3 weeks, and that is something I do know about Arsenal Football Club. We do not do 3 games a week continuously very, very well, and we haven't done for a few years now, and it's something that we have a chance to do something slightly different with a young developing squad. I'm not saying where we're going to end up in the top 4 or anything like that, but if we're going to have a chance, it's when we're outside of Europe with this age of squad. So, I find it a challenge, Elliot. I don't know if you guys probably do as well. I find it a challenge. I miss some of the games.
Oh, I miss them terribly, yeah.
Yeah, but I have to say the weekend games, they feel like cup finals. I was scanning online for tickets for the Watford game, and they're flying out the door. They're sold out, but you can get a few on Ticket Exchange, and tickets are being sold again. Their away tickets are being recycled. They're not being recycled. They're being kept. And that's a sign that things are going good, and there's a good feeling about things. So again, we're holding on to our emotions, but people are not stupid, right? They know what they're looking at. They know when something feels right. And I miss those games, but I also, the benefit of it is huge. So for Smith Rowe again, sorry, mate, I've drifted off the question. Smith Rowe.
You're doing me a favor, honestly. The less I have to do with it.
Smith Rowe, under 21s have got some proper games in the break, and so him and Conor Gallagher are in that side, and they are needed. So I can see that. I can see the reasoning there. After these next 2 qualifiers, England qualify, right, then Southgate will look at the squad properly and say, okay, who's going to be in it? I expect to see Ben White get back in quite quickly. Smith Rowe's got a huge battle because Southgate loves Mason Mount. You got Grealish, you got others there that are flying. You got Foden, you got all those players in the same slot. I think it's going to be really hard for him to break in this World Cup cycle. And maybe the next one could be one for him. So, yeah, watch his space.
It's interesting, too. I feel like international teams are like a club, and once you're in, you're in. Bukayo Saka is now an England international, and that's it. And it's just established. Could you make an argument that right now Emile Smith Rowe is playing better at Arsenal than Bukayo Saka? I don't think you could definitively say it, but I think you could say it's certainly an argument. But, Saka's in the club with England, and Smith Rowe's not there yet. And I doubt that it'll be long before he is, and I think he will have a big England career, is my guess. But I'm fine with that having to wait. Paul, it's it is a layoff, an international break until we face Liverpool, and that means that the manager can really go full throttle here against Watford. But I'm wondering, is there a benefit for him to get other players involved in this game, or you expect that he'll just go with the lineup that's kind of established itself now? Oba, Lacazette, Smith Rowe, Saka, Sambi, Partey, Tomiyasu, Benjamin White, Gabriel, Tavares, I guess, and then Ramsdale.
Yeah, so Tavares is the interesting one. I guess Tierney, the Scotland manager, was hinting might be back and fit enough potentially to play this weekend, because he was talking about him playing for Scotland and that he might be back for this weekend.
Can I ask you a question about that? If we say he's not ready to play this weekend, then we have an argument for him not being able to go away with Scotland, right? Like, we can kind of work that to our
no
advantage.
way on this earth Kieran Tierney will not go and play for Scotland.
Well, then maybe all the more reason not to play him against Watford.
Yeah, I don't think he'll play against Watford for a couple of reasons. But the primary one being, what's the rush? And on the other hand, from Nuno's standpoint, what would be the rush to drop him from the relationship with the manager? So I think the natural re-establishment of Kieran Tierney's role in the team would be after the interlull. So and just give him some more time. I always thought it was a funny one. Like there's always the dilemma of who do you bring in as a new signing, a backup to Kieran Tierney. You don't want somebody crap. We've done that before. We lost our shit over.
In particular.
Yeah. We lost our shit over Ryan Bertrand rumors. And we bring in this guy and it's like, it's great because he's young and he's like, he'll have time to develop. And like already we're here, like it's great. Don't get me wrong, but we're already at this, it's a honeymoon period. So maybe all Nuno's flaws will emerge very soon. But like, he's just at this point where he's like, gosh, he's really pushing for it. And then you think of Kieran Tierney's challenges in that if anything, he's got a risk to overtrain, overwork, and you bring in a young gun who's like bulging with muscles, incredible athleticism, tearing it up. I'm just afraid the guy's going to pop 27 calf muscles and thigh muscles, prepping himself in the gym, trying to keep up with this young gun. I'm not sure we actually got the perfect backup, even if we thought we did. But that's going to be an interesting dynamic and a great problem. And I mean, interestingly, we talked about that on I think in maybe the Leicester pod, but like one of the things Nuno brings is he might actually bring a level of defensiveness. Like Kieran Tierney's pretty good defensively, but it's not his biggest strength. I didn't have Nuno down as a defensive force, but he certainly has the physicality. Like it's not just speed, right? If he gets across a guy, the guy ain't getting past him 9 times out of 10.
Nuno, in terms of the physicality, speed, musculature. Yeah.
And like in terms of the physical gifts, he actually has what it takes to take that position off.
Isn't some of it starting position too, though? Like we sort of had to do this thing with Tierney where he just bombs forward and then the center midfielder drops into the space behind. Whereas with Tavares, we're letting him sort of pick his spots to go forward, but he's not just rampaging up the pitch and running away from the defenders.
Yeah, and because we don't build our attack on him and this asymmetric left wing thing, we don't kind of skew his position so badly that he can't get back, plus his recovery speed. And again, the physique with the cover, it's one thing to catch up to the player. It's another to be able to catch up with the player and just move him off the ball, which Nuno can do. So I know it sounds like I'm advocating for pushing Kieran Tierney out. I love Tierney, but this could, like if Nuno ups his quality and his composure and takes away some of that rawness that maybe we feared he might have, if that was a bit of a mirage and he's actually a little more polished or becomes polished quickly, that's one hell of a battle on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
And some great options.
I just noticed, just to bring some updates to that, Kieran Tierney actually trained today. So he's back in full training, in the training videos. Mm-hmm. So that'll be interesting. So he's going to get a couple of training sessions in before the weekend. Personally, I think the type of athlete Ismail Sarri is. He's more of a speed endurance guy, 30, 40 yard sprinter. I think Nuno's a perfect matchup for that. Yeah. So I think it sort of makes sense to me to keep it as is. And systemically, the way Tierney has played historically, we haven't done that since we brought Lacazette into the pivot, shall we say, the 1+1 role. And we saw in the rewatch how we were setting up with the centre-back split, centre mids on the slant, and your fullback just on the next line, but not too high, sitting on the same horizontal line, but not asymmetric, shall we say. So Kieran Tierney can do that just as well as anybody. So I know what I would do for this week. I would look after him for Scotland because they're going to play him every minute of every game. And I'd look after him, maybe bring him off the bench and just give him some sharpness. And then he'll play for Scotland and then he'll play at Anfield where we're going to need.
Can I ask you something about that? Because I was just thinking about this, Clive. Like, it sets up kind of weird because you say, all right, don't play him against Watford, which I agree with, so that he can go play for Scotland those 2 games with just a little bit less football in his legs. But then you got a situation where for 2 weeks, Tavares is sitting around the training ground with Mikel Arteta, with Liverpool on the horizon, and Tierney's off with Scotland, having not played for you in a month. And you got this guy who's played well for you and been there for training the whole time during the international break, and another guy who's rocking up, presumably on the Thursday before the Liverpool game. it makes it kind of hard to just throw him back in, doesn't it? Given that, like, the manager will have had all this time working with Tavares and all this good experience, unless something goes badly wrong this weekend with Tavares. And now here's Tierney, a guy obviously everybody rates, but who's been away with Scotland, hasn't been training, and you haven't seen him really play in your shirt for a month or month and a half.
Yeah, God, yeah, Elliot, you're not very low. For the start of the season, you were saying that this Tavares guy, he's not going to play. Tierney's going to play 38 games. He's got to know Europe. And now this Tavares is coming. That Tierney, and I don't think you can pick him. So like
to update my prior, which I am doing as we speak.
So yeah, me personally, that's what I would do. I would save Tierney's legs a little bit. We know that Steve Clarke is going to play. Trust me, the best two players are him and Robertson. They're going to play. Scotland have got it all on. He's going to play, right? So, and he will not take him off neither. He'll play him, and so he'll come back. He'll come back match fit, if you see what I mean. If he is fit, and you go to Anfield, which is the hardest away day in Europe. And for me, you have your boys that have done it before. You have your boys experienced at that level. You have your guy just given a 4-year contract to north of £100,000 a week and probably going to be our next captain. You make sure you have him there for the big moments. And that's what I would do. You know how I feel about ending games, and you know, I look forward to the 5 subs when they can actually happen, so we get less strung up about the starting 11, shall we say, because I love to see tactical nuances being handed to the coaches, and 3 subs is never enough. I think 4 would be nice if I'm really honest, but 5, when you have 5 subs, you tend to use 4 rather than 5 because it's a bit risky, if you see what I mean. So I think that's really, really positive for coaching side of things. So yeah, I'm not worried about. That's how I would do it, Elliot, and I think form goes through sort of waves in the season, and I'm not concerned about our good form. But I'm looking at, say, Man City, for example. I'm looking at the players they've got on their bench who are not in form right now. You know, they've got Stones on the bench, Sterling on the bench, De Bruyne on the bench. These guys all have their moment, you know, and we've got quite a few of our guys having moments, but some of them are not, like Saka, for example. But he will come again. How you ride form, how you ride that hot hand is really important. And I think for Nuno, one more go, and Kieran Tierney will take over after his international break, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would be fine with that. I think it is just sort of an interesting situation you find yourself in. If Tierney doesn't play for Arsenal this weekend and then plays twice for Scotland, and Tavares is excellent again this weekend and has all the international break to be with Arteta preparing for Liverpool, you know, it sets up where you would think he might be in the driver's seat for that position. The thing I will say is that the Liverpool game, I almost see it as a free hit. Maybe you don't want to look at it that way, but like, they're very, very, very good. We have not been particularly competitive with them when we played them recently. It'd be great to get a result, but our season for me does not actually hinge on the Liverpool game. It's the games around it. We got to beat United, like that. Those are the ones. So I'm willing to be a little more lax on that. Obviously, Watford is the one we got to go out and win. And here's the thing, Paul. We are getting ready to get to a period pretty soon where we are going to have to solve a squad problem that a lot of teams are going to be struggling with, and that's the African Cup of Nations. And this is where I wanted to direct the rest of our conversation, I think, because there have been rumors, nonsense rumors in my mind, that we're looking at bringing Ceballos back. And of course, my initial reaction to that is, well, bollocks to that. It's ridiculous. But you sit back and you think and you go, okay, no Thomas Partey, no Mohamed El-Neni, and probably no Granit Xhaka, depending on injury. So your midfielders are Sambi Lokonga and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. You know, depending on how you think Odegaard could be used, or Smith Rowe or Saka or whatever. But that's it. It's Sambi Lokonga and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Those are your midfielders during the AFCON. And then up front, there's no Aubameyang. There's no Pepe. It does start to...
Can I ask you, why do we think the Ceballos rumors are ridiculous? I don't, but I haven't spent a huge amount of time on it, but why?
I think it's more that I think the idea that you would bring a player in whose job is to be there for you for basically 1 month and then not... Like, I don't think Ceballos is someone we want to make an Arsenal player long-term. And I think the only way we should bring in a player to cover the AFCON period... I guess with a loan, you could say, look, we're loaning you to play for 1 month and that's it. But like, it has to be lined up right away. You have to get it done January 1st. And then by the end of January, you're basically saying to that player, thanks for the memories. It's just a weird
approach.
But
wouldn't it be ridiculous if we did nothing? Because we could have Xhaka not fit.
Yeah, I see it both ways, Paul. Absolutely.
Like, how could you not do something is my question. It could be Sambi Lokonga and Maitland-Niles.
Charlie Patino, Miguel Aziz. I mean, there's not much there. You're right.
Well, Miguel Aziz we can't have. He's out on loan. So Charlie Patino hasn't been deemed large enough to make the bench and the pitch for any cup games.
Yeah. What about creative solutions like a Benjamin White moving into midfield and Tomiyasu becoming a center back? I mean, you could start to do things like that. Benjamin White could play with Maitland-Niles or Sambi, and then you could have, I mean, I hate to say it, but you could have there's
been a lot of talk about Whitey in midfield, and
just for this period,
yeah, but because he played midfield a couple of times at Leeds. But I think a lot of people say that but didn't watch the games. And I didn't watch, I think he played 2, maybe 3 games in midfield. I watched 1.5 of them, and it wasn't very midfieldy what he was asked to do. It was basically, I mean, we know how Leeds play. They're not exactly possessing the ball and stroking it around in midfield. He was basically being Ben White, but standing in midfield. And in fact, Bielsa was chopping and changing. I think he had like 4, the commentators were going nuts. He had 4 formation changes in the space of about 5 minutes at the end of the first half after starting with Benjamin White in midfield, because he just, I don't think it was a knock on White by any means, but he just wasn't happy with what was going on. So it's not like he was this great midfielder option for Leeds or for anybody else. So, I mean, we all know he's good on the ball, and he probably has the skills and ability to do a pretty good Declan Rice impersonation, but I don't know that you drop him in for 2 games and expect it to go well alongside Sambi Lokonga. Like, if Danny Ceballos is up for it, he's a known quantity. He's played good games for us. He's not the be-all and end-all for what we would need. I mean, he'd be replacing, my God, Partey and maybe Xhaka, which is, he plays alongside those guys. The problem is there'll be 3 or 4 guys who play alongside a Xhaka or a Partey, and it's potentially Xhaka and very likely Partey, who's gone for a bunch of games. So
I guess the way I'd answer it, Paul, is I would say, can you use the combination of Smith Rowe, Odegaard, Sambi, Maitland-Niles, maybe Benjamin White to roughly get through that period and not then be stuck with a player that you've kind of marooned in your team where you're saying thanks for the memories, now we don't need you. And especially given that you're not 100% sure of the improvement you get from that player. I don't know. I'll flip it to you, Clive. You could certainly address the Ceballos rumors, but even just more than that, midfield's going to be an issue if Xhaka's not fit. And I guess my expectation is that some combination of Maitland-Niles, Sambi, Odegaard, maybe Benjamin White, maybe even Smith Rowe is what Arteta leans on to get through it, rather than bringing someone in to be surplus to requirements by the end of January.
Right, so there's 2 or 3 rumours that are out there, firstly. So Ceballos is one. It's a pretty weak one, in my opinion. Mourinho's also looking at him, by the way, and Nacho to go to Roma. So I think this is a classic case of player not playing, sitting on his backside. Let's get some rumours out there to let everyone know he's available in January.
Yeah.
Right? There's 2 other rumours, lone rumours. There's one other lone rumour in Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Again, that causes friction amongst Arsenal fans. He's 28. He's now really playing for Liverpool, so I don't see that happening. But Arteta's meant to be a fan, and it was a loan deal potentially, but he's, that seems to have changed the last couple of weeks. There's another rumour of a guy called Dennis Zakaria, Xhaka's Swiss teammate. Now, he's on a free transfer next summer. Now, he's somebody that basically Xhaka should have been playing with many, many years ago. We should have bought him years ago. He's quite leggy, a little bit Joe Willocky, inside and outside. He sometimes plays on the right and sometimes plays inside. Very leggy, very two-way. If it's a potential free transfer or a small fee, and it's somebody that we've been continually linked with for a few years now, that one's got a bit of something about it. It sort of fits the age profile. El Nenny's meant to be going to Galatasaray. That looks pretty solid. Whether he stays or, where he's not available for African nations anyway, but El Nenny could disappear. Partey seems a long-termer. Sambi seems a long-termer. Xhaka seems at least this season, and we'll see what goes on. So there is room for one more. There are rumours still of Everton sniffing around Maitland-Niles, so see what happens there, whether that be now or the summer. Doesn't need to be now, given the fact we lose people. So Zakaria seems like an interesting one to me, something that's not just for now, but for long term, but we can maybe give a small fee and keep the player. As for internal solutions, I would think about Callum Chambers before I think about moving Ben White out of defence. Callum Chambers had a year playing for Fulham, where he was their player of the year playing in centre midfield. He is that sort of stopper guy that, as Paul alluded to when Ben White played for Leeds, he literally was like a centre half playing in front. And he's got ability to pass the ball and switch the ball to either side. So I think Chambers can do that job. I haven't seen Chambers play for a long time in centre mid, and playing for Fulham and bits and pieces for Middlesbrough is not the same playing for Arsenal. We just got to hope Xhaka's fit, really. And Xhaka with Sambi will be fine. Maitland-Niles sharing time. And maybe an internal solution like Chambers, for FA Cup games and things like that, when they come around, which will come around in January. I do think if you are going to do something, a loan or Zakaria seems sensible. But I'm only going on rumours, really. And it'd be interesting to see the type of player that we would bring in. So I'm not against Oxlade-Chamberlain. I'll just ruin my mentions then. I'm not against Oxlade-Chamberlain. I like players like him that are quick to the ball and, powerful transition type players. But I think he's got up the pecking order at Liverpool now. And I don't see him moving in the near term.
Yeah, well, that leaves then the attack. And before we get out of here and turn it over to Phil Costa to talk about the brilliant Emile Smith Rowe, Paul, losing Pepe, well, he's a bench player right now, so you can sort of move beyond that. But losing Aubameyang means there's going to be place for someone to take that role. Now, you could say the natural option is Lacazette, and I tend to agree. Having said that, the role he's playing right now is not the role Aubameyang's playing, so I guess he could shift into the Oba role, and Odegaard comes in, and they play together. There's also some interest in whether we might see some of Martinelli at striker. It's interesting because we are sort of lucky that Lacazette has come back into the team and been really effective over this period, because he's a player that now it looks like we're going to need for, well, maybe for the whole season, but at a minimum, need him quite a lot for that month. So do you think it's just as simple as everything stays the same, where Lacazette plays the Oba role and Odegaard comes in behind him, or maybe something a little different?
Yeah. I don't think there's any, for me, any doubt there that it'll just be Lacazette playing up front. He played quite a bit, especially in the second half of the season last year. He played a lot of centre forward for us, and I think pretty creditably was one of our more informed players when we were struggling for form. And in fact, I think well before we get to January, we'll probably have shifted back to largely using Odegaard as the 10 with whoever, Aubameyang up front. I don't think we'll do this, if you want to call it a 4-4-2, 4-4-2 thing throughout the season. I think it's just we're riding the vibes of that at the moment. It'll be an option we use, or maybe an option we use kind of on the 70-minute mark, where we bring on Lacazette. My guess is Odegaard will, at some stage in the near future, reestablish his place in the team, and he'll be the 10 working with Aubameyang. I'm not 100% sure that's what happened, but I think it's more likely than not. Maybe we mix it up from game to game, but I doubt you're going to do every second game or whatever, rotating between two formations. So we're going to have to pick something. Maybe Lacazette's stamina and fitness through playing all this, he'll start being able to play 50, 60, 70, 80 minutes with the required level of intensity. But if you're getting 20 or 30 good minutes out of him, against certain teams, that's not going to be enough. And I think we saw against Leicester, he was looked pretty gassed after about 20, 25 minutes, and had a second win towards the end of the first half, and then comes out second half refreshed. You got some time, some minutes from him. But like he's really stretching to get to this 70-minute mark. Whereas the one thing you can say about Odegaard, especially if it's two guys pressing up front, Odegaard can join Aubameyang when we're pressing their back line. He's got legs to run all day long. I just think at some stage in the medium term, we're going to flip to it's Aubameyang and Odegaard as those two key roles. And maybe we'll incorporate some aspects of this 4-4-2-ish approach we have without the ball, and lean into Aubameyang as the centre forward when we're with the ball, and Odegaard will play more like a conventional 10.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Clive? I guess
of course.
I'm so worried about the midfield, but this is another area that's going to lead to a rethink in terms of how we've been attacking.
Yeah, this is a key bit, because Aubameyang is obviously he won't be around, and so he is like he's playing like a leader now, isn't he? He's leading the charge, leading the press, he's leading with his energy, he's leading the troops over the hill, and so that's a big miss. And that sprinter at the tip of the arrow, I think, is really important. Lacazette doesn't do that. We can obviously adjust. We can play almost like double false nines, if you see what I mean, and play two inside, have sprinters from the side. So there is a rumour out there for, is it Nicola Yovic at Real Madrid? Now, he's a player who's played for Eintracht Frankfurt, and Real Madrid bought him at 20 years of age. He is I urge you not to watch his YouTubes of 2-3 years ago, because he is so good, you will never sleep. He's unbelievable from crosses.
I got news for you. I already don't sleep, so it's fine.
I was talking to FK about this the other day online. I've always liked him, but he's a player that's a memory at the moment. I think his ability on crosses and different shots, both feet, headers, absolutely massive finishes in the box. Real Madrid bought him, and Real Madrided him, right? Killed him. Had him sitting behind Benzema. Benzema just went to a new level. He's barely played. He went back to Eintracht Frankfurt last year. I'm not quite sure of his form, but the fact I didn't hear much means I don't think he was great. So he's a broken player. He's a project. Will also go for that. Will they go for that restoration project? Real Madrid, again, well, 25 million euros and potential loan with an option. So that's something, again, much like Zakaria, it's a rumour that's been around for quite a while, and we do like that pivot player with strength that can own the box. So one to watch there. When it comes to internal solutions, Lacazette will play that one role behind, and we put with maybe an Odegaard. And the only other tip of the arrow player is Martinelli, really, isn't it? Because Pepe will be away. Balogun potentially, but I think he needs to go on loan. So this is a challenge for us. It's quite a number of games as well, maybe 4, 5, 6 games. This is a real challenge for us, and I'd be interested to see how we approach it. But I said the other week, building Martinelli now is the most important thing, because we're going to need him. We're going to need the 18-year-old kid who scored a number of goals. Numbers, Elliot, I've forgotten them now, but we need that kid again. We need that kid with confidence. So what we're doing now with him is really important for that month in January in particular. But that's the rumours that are out there. And I don't see any other solution to mimic what we're doing. Whatever we do, we just sprint to the top end of the pitch. And that's the most important thing. And as far as I'm concerned, with Pepe gone and Aubameyang gone, for me, that just leaves Martinelli. So his restoration is really important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also complicated by the fact that someone might get injured. Players might be out. I mean, it is going to be a really tricky period for a lot of clubs. And, I think as great as it is that we have this one game a week situation, the African Cup of Nations throws everything into a little bit of chaos throughout January. So it'll be very interesting to see which teams can survive that. I think in attack, we have what it takes to ride it out. I think in midfield, that's going to be a lot more interesting if Shaq is not available. So we'll see how that goes. I am really looking forward to hearing what Phil has to say about Emile Smith Rowe and what Scouted Football figured out about him, other than just that he is the cat's meow. So we'll leave it there. We'll take a quick break. I will tell you about Manscaped, obviously, because I wouldn't want to leave you in the wilderness with Santa's beard in your pants, is what it says here. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll get Phil on for the Emile Smith Rowe section. Paul's on Twitter at PosMorePants. Thanks, Pos.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
playing a little bit hurt myself, so thanks for tolerating that. Again, I do appreciate it. Tone of this pod, a little muted, a little calmer. You might say that's a good thing, but for me, just doesn't quite feel right. So we will have an instant reaction, though, on Sunday. I assure you of that, and plenty of good stuff throughout the international break. I also think we have an analytics pod from Scott coming maybe as soon as today or tomorrow. So lots more to come. We'll take a break. We'll talk about Manscaped, and Phil Costa will be up after that. Stay with us. Okay, just real quick, since I am not feeling well, let's get this out of the way. You know about Manscaped. You know about the Lawnmower 4.0. You know that you can get 20% off and free worldwide shipping when you go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision. At this point, I'm asking you, for my sanity, for all our sake, given that my health is failing here, let's just do this. Let's just go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision. Lawnmower 4.0 is available. They have the Weed Whacker for ear hair and nose hair. They now have the shampoo and conditioner, the body soap, the body wash, that's it, yep. And then all the other tonics and tinctures and powders and things like that to keep your area fresh. I don't know how many times I got to say this. This is stuff we all do, right? And we all do it. So the question is there a better product out there that pampers you more, that takes better care of you? I don't think so. And I think with the Lawnmower 4.0 in particular, like if you are going to trim body hair, then you should just do it with this. You get ceramic blades, skin-safe technology, a long battery life, wet-dry use, a nice LED light so you can see what you're doing, adjustable sizing guards you can put on so you can do different stuff like eyebrows and things like that. It's just a brilliant, purpose-driven device designed to be the best body trimmer you can get. It's that simple. So go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision, 20% off free shipping. I don't have Clive here to ask if that's enough, but it's literally all I can muster today. So please go there and do that. And now, Phil Costa. Okay, we're back, and now it is my great pleasure, as it always is, to welcome Phil Costa on the podcast. You can find him on Twitter at _Phil Costa. Hello, Phil.
Hey, Elliot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I want to clear up one thing I said wrong in the previous section. I'll blame you, but it's not your fault. I was talking about, we were discussing the Tierney and Tavares situation and whether it might be Tierney for Liverpool after the international break. And I was talking about Tavares having a couple weeks to be at Colney with Arteta and Tierney not having that time. But Tavares has been called up to the Portugal under-21s, I believe. So they'll both be away. So just a little correction there for people who say that I don't know what I'm talking about. I still don't know what I'm talking about, but I am correcting that. So, Phil, let's start with the new Scouted Football Edition that's come out. The cover boy is Emile Smith Rowe. Maybe you could just give us sort of a quick introduction on what the volume is to begin with.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, obviously it's about Emile Smith Rowe, everybody's favorite. Well, second, maybe a joint favorite Halelander at the moment.
Not Southgate.
Yeah, not Southgate. No, get those kids away from the team. Basically we just produce a quarterly magazine that features 25 players from around the world in different leagues and different continents that have basically caught our eye. And obviously in this edition, we've decided to make Smith Rowe the cover boy, the cover star. We wanted him front and center, and the artwork is really cool. And
it's awesome. It's sort of what it's like, the third shirt design sort of enfolding around him a bit.
Yeah, over the red home jersey. And it just looks so clean. It's almost like a photograph. There's so much detail in there. So Kevin did a wonderful job with those. And obviously, if he's on the cover, then there's going to be some words inside. So I've written a profile about him and, his strengths, his weaknesses, his, forecast for the future and stuff like that. So that's what I've done. And then there's also a big feature on Hale End, written by Lewis Ambrose, who many people will know from this podcast and the Arsblog preview pods. And I think there's, 8 pages of that feature. So he's gone through, back in the days with Merson and Tony Adams, all the way through to Kieran Gibbs, and now we're stopping off in this wonderful generation now. So, yeah, really cool piece, and we just wanted to give it some love and some publicity because of the obviously the heavy Arsenal angle. So, yeah, we just thought it would be a nice opportunity to give some copies away here on this podcast, and yeah, hopefully people can enjoy it.
Yeah, that would be great. Why don't we get into a little of the detail that's in there? First of all, with respect to the article that Lewis wrote on Hale End, I mean, was he able to get sort of any access to some of the guys that have been responsible over the years? I mean, because it's changed so much. I think we went through a period there where Hale maybe wasn't producing the kind of talent that we'd expect. And there's been a big change, a big overhaul there. And I think it's been a focus of the club. And to be fair to Raul, he identified it as one of the pillars of the club. You know, not a man that I regard particularly highly as doing anything good for Arsenal, but I do have to say that it seemed like there was a lot of focus on changing and improving what was going on in the academy, and it is bearing fruit. So is that something that maybe Lewis uncovered in his examination? What do you sort of attribute the changes to principally?
Well, actually, obviously there was a sort of pointed effort towards improving the youth setup and those coming through into the first team from Sanyehi, but it was actually Andries Jonker who kind of kick-started everything by, there was a pretty damning quote, and he said that Arsenal was stuck in the past in their academy, and I think he made a real effort to improve the facilities, improve the coaching, give a real clear pathway into the first team, and really focus, some strong efforts onto the academy to get some players into the first team, and it was really sort of interesting to read his take on the situation, because you'd imagine at a big Premier League club like Arsenal, who have a strong history of youth, you wouldn't think there'd be too many issues there, but there were a few quotes from the man himself that Lewis got. And yeah, he was rather scathing. So I think it's maybe we have him to thank for a couple of these guys coming through now. But I think a club like Arsenal should always have youth and this kind of connection to its own at the centre of everything they do. And I'm really glad that we're kind of seeing it now in some of the boys coming through now. So, but yeah, it was just a really nice feature from obviously the olden. Not the olden days, but back when we
depends on how old you are.
Ye old, yes. Back from when Tony Adams and Paul Merson were there, and yeah, Lewis. It's really well researched and everything. So you get nice artwork, good research pieces. I mean, what's not to like, really? So we just thought people would enjoy the Arsenal focus of it this time.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like there was a pretty big lull there in terms of turning out elite talent. Like I'm trying to think of, really, well, let me ask you first of all, what do you think constitutes a success from the academy? Because there would be people that would say, well, Kieran Gibbs wasn't a success or Alex Iwobi wasn't a success. But I would say that those are resounding successes, that when your academy produces players that play for the first team at all, let alone secure really sizable fees to go on and play for other Premier League clubs, in the case of Alex Iwobi or Joe Willock for that matter, that those are successes. But, how do you view what a good academy should be doing for a club of Arsenal size, and, whether Arsenal maybe did go through a period where it was really underperforming those requirements?
I think a good academy makes careers regardless of whether they end up at Arsenal or not. And I would completely agree with you. Kieran Gibbs, played 150 games for Arsenal? If that's not a success, then I don't know what is. We brought him through and he played a big role in some big cup wins. Alex Iwobi obviously divides opinion, but we sold him for like £35 million. The same with Joe Willock. It's just like, how can you not view this as a nothing but success? These are guys that we've taken on from 7-8 years old. When you've got just a semblance of talent, there's no coaching, there's no, footballing intuition at that age. So you have to craft that yourselves. And to see these guys go on and have Premier League careers, even Championship careers, is a huge success. There have been maybe one or two occasions where talent has slipped through the net, shall we say? Serge Gnabry, for example, Ismail Benacer, who's at Milan now. A couple of these guys, Daniel Marlon, who moved for a lot of money, but it's just how it goes. You can't keep everybody. So they're also in charge of their own careers and they can make decisions when they want. So, I think on the whole, there were some issues, and for me, the club have rectified those through first Jonker, then Sanyehi, and now with someone like Per Mertesacker in place, I think we're more than on the right track to have Hale back in the good books again.
Yeah, and I mean, it is interesting because I'm trying to think of any period when I've been a fan of Arsenal, really, knowledgeable fan. You might say there's never been a period like that, but when there's been this many players making major impacts in the first team or flitting around the first team. I mean, if you go back the last few seasons, Nketiah, Saka, Smith Rowe, Nelson, Willock. Did I say Maitland-Niles? Maitland-Niles, if I didn't, I think I did. There have been academy players really throughout involved in the team and playing a big role in the team. And now Balogun, presumably will be in the mix at some point. There have been young players that aren't really academy players like Martinelli and Guendouzi. But I don't know. I mean, is this the golden era of the Hale Academy since, the heady days of Merson and Tony Adams?
I think you could definitely make a case for that. I mean, those names that you mentioned, they have made tangible contributions. And even if they don't end up having this, Tony Adams-esque one club career with, I don't know, 1 million appearances for Arsenal, and we sell them, at some point, like, we're still going to get money for them because they're young and English. It's just like, I even people get upset when they don't make it, but this is essentially them making it anyway because we've given them a good career and they've forged good careers having come out of the Arsenal Academy. So I think there's a lot of, we feel kind of this paternal protection over our academy products, and they have to be here and succeed under our roof. And it's just like, the good ones will stay. If they're good enough, they'll be here, they'll play. If things don't quite work out for the other guys, then, good luck to them. And we keep an eye out and hope for the best. So it's just how things go, And I think, as I mentioned before, success is measured through their careers. And so far, I don't think, from that group especially, I don't think there's anybody, that can claim that we've mismanaged their careers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, going back to the Arsene Wenger years of the 2010s, like obviously Jack Wilshere was the gold standard, the crown jewel of the academy, and it didn't work out. Injuries largely to blame for that, I think. But there were a lot of sort of players that flattered to deceive in the sense that they were there on the fringe, the Benicofobes or Chuba Akpoms or J. Emmanuel Thomases, who came with a lot of hype and didn't make it. And we always see some of that. I mean, like right now, obviously, it's not enough that we have Saka and Smith Rowe starting game in, game out. Miguel Aziz and Charlie Patino are banging on the door, and Kiddo Taylor-Hart. Do you think that sometimes we just don't have the right expectation for the hit rate on the academy? Like it is the case that you're getting these players very young. The range of outcomes is massive. And even if someone is really impressing at that level, it's not always super predictive of what they'll be. So when you look at that next group, Patino, Aziz, Kiddo Taylor-Hart, some of the players that are really being celebrated from that class. And I mean, heck, Balogun's even still playing in the reserves at times. Do you think that we'll see a similar level of success, or that maybe Saka and Smith Rowe have given us false expectations for what you should look for from the academy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to forget that how lucky we are to have stumbled across these two guys at this particular moment. I mean, they've probably saved us, 100 million in transfer fees, maybe even more.
Yeah,
and they've just come right out of our doorstep. So, what's happening now is genuinely amazing. And you mentioned a couple of those guys, Patino, Balogun, Aziz. We're all guilty of it. When we see a young guy coming through with some potential, and there's, some potential to be in and around the first team, there's nothing better for us because we project ourselves onto them, right? Yeah. Everybody wants to be that person, and to see them, not fulfill that success and that potential at the club is almost like your, failure as well coming to the fore, and it's just, we're all guilty of it. It's part of what makes football so good because you build connections with these guys, and it's normal to have expectations, but a lot of the time there's such a weight and a pressure, coming straight onto these guys from the academy, and they're 18 years old. I mean, some people weren't even at university by then. So imagine coming into top level football, playing against seasoned professionals who are going to kick you at every opportunity and are twice the size of you. It's so difficult, and especially now with the modern game being so fast and so transition heavy, you need to be right at that level athletically as well to even hold your own. And I think we're all so excited to see them come through that we just put so much on them. But I think in the case of Arsenal, you know, there were a couple of League Cup games this year, and it was like, where's Patino? Where's Patino? And Salah didn't get off the bench, and it's just like, you know, I think Arteta has shown enough during his time at the club to sort of give a confidence to the fans that if people are ready, they will get opportunities. And I think there's no need to rush them, because especially Patino, I have a really good feeling that we could have a player there. So I'm just here for the journey, man. I'm really excited, and I'm glad that we've taken this youthful approach, shall we say, because it's so enjoyable to watch as a fan.
It certainly makes it more enjoyable. I agree. I think also what happens, right, is you hear whispers about players who are good at another club, or, you know, coming up. I remember we were linked with Nkunku, and I was like, who is this Nkunku guy? Well, it turns out he's actually pretty good. But, like, he's not an Arsenal player. He's some player that plays somewhere else that people are whispering about being particularly good. What makes academy kids sort of unique is, like, they're these players that you hear about. Oh, yeah, this guy Patino, he's going to be really good. Or, you know, Reece Nelson, he's going to be good. He's off at Red Bull, and he's doing great things there. And, like, the difference is not just that you're hearing whispers about them, but they're your players, and they're coming up through your academy. And so you imbue them with all of these hope and optimism, and you trust every rumor, and you believe everything that's said about them. And then, like, it can be hard to sort of catch up with the reality that nothing they've accomplished necessarily translates to senior football. And that's a whole different level that they have to reach when they get in that Arsenal first team. And it is very rare. You know, you see, I mean, I don't know. You see what Smith Rowe and Saka are doing. And when you're ready, it's just so clear you're ready. It's why it also blows my mind what Cesc Fabregas did at the age he did to come in and be as dominant as he was. I mean, those are the outliers. Well, so let's get into Emile Smith Rowe, why you picked him as a cover boy, and what your sort of research on him turned up and what you were looking for. The interesting thing with Smith Rowe is I can't think of a player who had the same kind of trajectory into the first team that he did, because prior to that Chelsea game Boxing Day last season, he had really hardly ever played for Arsenal. And he goes away to Huddersfield and he has a good loan. And he comes back and he's injured. And he goes into the game when Arsenal are at their absolute low ebb, in a game that was, you know, I think some people thought might even finish off Mikel Arteta. The expectation was that we would get battered. I mean, we were sitting near the relegation zone. And he plays brilliantly. We win the game. And he goes on, for as long as he's fit, to basically be an ever-present in the first team. And when he plays, we've mostly been good. I can't think of another academy kid who's at the same kind of propulsive injection into the team in the way that he has. I mean, even Bukayo Saka was out a bit, played a little bit of left back, right, or a little bit of right back, whatever it was, moved around a bit, and then really started to hit stride. So do you find his introduction to be unique in that respect, that he came not from nowhere, but from very little experience in the first team to essentially becoming an ever-present overnight with that Boxing Day victory?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'd seen glimpses of him under Unai Emery in the Europa League, and there were other cup games that he'd come in and out of. But as you said, it was just every time you felt like he was on the cusp of something, there was always a shoulder injury or a groin injury. And then it would be like 3 months. And it's like, where's Smith Rowe? Like, what the hell's happened here? He's gone again. And you're just like, please don't let this be another Wilshere situation, you know. But it was interesting because I wrote in the profile, only a mixture of bad luck and injuries merely delayed his inevitable breakthrough. Like, for me, he was always Arsenal quality. Like, you just see the way he moves, his first touch, his natural kind of intuition for the game. This was an Arsenal player. And we just needed his body to catch up a little bit with the physical demands of top level football. And I'm so pleased that, as you said, once he broke through on that fateful day, that Boxing Day, sounds like a whimsical tale. It's like that his body's kind of held up. And, you know, the word for me is a catalyst. He was the definition of a catalyst when he came into the side. And that was like one hell of a corner we turned. You know, and I'm just so happy and so pleased that he's managed to not only have such an incredible effect on the team, but stay injury free as well, because his qualities are exactly what we needed at that very moment. And he just came in, and yeah, it was perfect. I'm so glad that we have him, and he's a personal favorite of mine. So writing this piece was just a joy, really, having to watch through footage and look at his stats and stuff. I
love him. I'm still not sure what he is. And what I mean by that is I I mean, he wears the 10. I'm not sure what a 10 is anymore. He loves to make that sort of second man run, arrive in the box late to score. He's playing off the left a little bit, tucking inside. He has almost the Ramsey-esque engine of driving from deep and propelling the ball forward. It was Gary Neville, I think, who said he is the best player or Carragher, I guess, the best player with the ball at his feet in the league right now. Mm-hmm. But, like a lot of these players in Mikel Arteta's system, we're still sort of figuring out what's best for them. I think Saka has now sort of settled in on the right. Odegaard, we're still sort of trying to see where that fits. Do you have a sense of where Smith Rowe will land in terms of the position that will suit him best and what he needs to improve to do that? From my eyes, he can still improve the consistency of his delivery in the final third. That when he makes those buccaneering runs forward, the timing and weight and decision-making of that final ball can still maybe go up a notch. Is that something that you see in his game?
Yeah, agreed. But it's also easy to forget that this is somebody with less than 50 senior appearances under his belt. You can kind of use that critique for any young player, I guess. I mean, even Kylian Mbappe yesterday missed 3 1-on-1s for PSG and they ended up drawing 2-2 with RB Leipzig. So, and this is like the cream of the crop. Like, I don't know. I feel like the more he plays, it will just be with experience and these things come, like you said, Fabregas was just a complete anomaly. Like we will probably never see anything like him for the next 10, 20 years. But for me, his value in the side is kind of the oil that greases the wheels. I know Tim's made the comparison to Thomas Rosicky before on the podcast, and that for me is a perfect one. I just think he's, someone that just flutters around the pitch. He's a facilitator. When you need him to run in behind and stretch teams, he can do it. When you need him in to create overloads in midfield, he can do that. He's always looking to give it and go. Just an injection of speed and quality. And these players are priceless, because how often did we see during that difficult spell, take a touch, roll it under the boot, go to the right back, bring it back to Granit Xhaka. He goes to the left back, roll it under the boot. And it's just like, come on, guys, give it. You just need something. And for me, he brings all of that. And I think it's quite interesting because generally, I know they've improved of late, but generally he doesn't jump out at you on the stats page. There's nothing really like you think, wow, this guy's, an incredible dribbler or, expected goals or expected assists. There's nothing so amazing. I mean, the numbers are steady, shall we say, but I just think his all-around game and what he brings to the side in terms of his intuition, knowing where to stand, how to weight the pass, where to control the ball. For me, that stuff is, he's just got such a high footballing IQ. And for me, he is an Arsenal player. That is Arsene Wenger and a football player. And for me, that is such a nice sentiment. And I really enjoy what he brings.
Yeah, it's difficult because we always do this thing where like, could he play in central midfield? Could he be a 10? Could he be a 9? Could he be, these players do tend to get chances to move around the pitch and do different things. What did you think about that comment? I mean, I guess it was last season Arteta said, he's the number 10 for Arsenal. He needs to get 15 goals and 10 assists, and he has the ability to do that. I mean, to be fair, very, very few players get 15 goals and 10 assists. But he sort of laid down a marker of what he wanted from Smith Rowe. And I do get the sense that Smith Rowe is trying to up that end product this season. Do you see him being that kind of prolific end product player, or more of a tempo quickener between the lines?
Ooh, I mean, it's difficult to say. I mean, I can definitely see him getting there eventually, but I'm not sure it's going to happen.
Well, 15 and 10 is ridiculous. Like, come on.
That's like Kevin De Bruyne numbers.
Yeah, that's literally what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's a bit of an overspend in that kind of department. But for me, it's interesting because, we'll go back to Fabregas again and Ramsey. There was kind of a moment when you could see things click in front of goal for them. I don't know if you noticed that or if you could feel something similar, but there was loads of times where Ramsey used to go through and he used to put it wide, or the fans used to get on Ramsey's back a lot for that kind of thing, and then all of a sudden that one season, I think it was 2013-14, it was just like everything's going in. He's scoring volleys, he was scoring flicks in front of the keeper, it was sitting defenders down, and I'm slowly seeing that with Smith Rowe now. I can see him there's there's an ease in front of goal. There's a more natural feeling there. And I think a couple of his finishes this season, actually, particularly the one at Leicester, I think that's a really smart finish. Because, the ball fell kindly to him, obviously, but there's a lot in his way. There's two defenders throwing themselves at that. Schmeichel's obviously a very good keeper, but he just ran onto it, side-footed it in, done. Like, it was just really nice. And I think there's he's just become far more comfortable in those kind of areas, and we needed it. Maybe if, the target that Arteta set was a bit unreasonable or a bit too far ahead, I think we needed goals from him at some point, and slowly we're seeing it come to the fore. And this is a really good player we have on our hands, and I think people don't realize just what we've got yet. I think it will come, but people are maybe just overlooking it slightly.
Well, it also shows just the quality of his engine, the value of that engine so one of the goals was against Spurs, right? It's the give and go with Aubameyang, where he comes from deep, gets on it, and bursts past. He then had a very similar one against, was it Villa? Did he score
Villa, when the one off Tyrone Mings that deflected.
Yes, and it's basically the same thing. And it just takes a tremendous awareness, but also an engine, right, Phil? Because he starts from very deep in both of those moves.
Yeah.
And he showed, he gives it to Aubameyang. I think a lot of players in that situation would be like, I gave it to my forward, job done. But by carrying that run forward, which a lot of players, I think we take for granted movement that, players just run. But they don't. There are some players that just give the ball. We were rewatching the Leicester game, and there was a moment where Tomiyasu gives it to someone on the right, and I'm not necessarily sure who it was, but the minute he gives it, he sprints into the space so it can be a give and go. Oh, it's Lacazette. And it's a 1-2, and it gets us out of trouble, and away we go, and we have an attack that winds up going up the left. If Tomiyasu had just given it to Lacazette and stayed still, Lacazette would have the ball taken off him. He wouldn't have had anyone to give it to. I think we take for granted, what happens on the ball as being the thing, when what happens off the ball really dictates what players can do. And you see that with Smith Rowe so much, I think, that the way he runs with the ball at his feet is eye-catching. But look at those long-bursting runs to get in a position on both of those Aubameyang layoffs, where I don't think a lot of players make up that ground and get there. That's a special skill, right? I mean, that's something that we should probably be more attuned to.
Completely. People don't realize how taxing football can be, because you're constantly stopping, starting, running here. Sometimes you don't even get the ball and you've made like a 50-yard sprint into the corner. And it's just the key thing about football is the next pass. And for me, Smith Rowe is already a king at that. He knows where to be, how to give it to the receiver of his pass so they can put it on their stronger foot, or where the space is. And that's stuff that is so difficult to teach. Obviously, someone like Mbappe, for example, has raw physical quality when he can sprint and, completely burst past defenders and finish. But for me, that kind of footballing IQ, it's just so impressive. And I think Saka has that as well, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
They're just super intelligent. And I don't know, with Smith Rowe, I kind of feel like behind this laid-back demeanour, this quite shy demeanour, there's a lot of determination there. And I think, not that he's making up for lost time, but I think he's just really enjoying his football at the moment. He's injury-free. He's really putting in a shift out on that left-hand side. He's tracking back. He's doing his defensive work. And yeah, I just think he's come on so much. I mean, even from the start of this season, I think his levels have gone up again. And I just think, we're just so lucky to have these two in our team, and I'm just enjoying watching them every week.
Yeah. I think the other thing that sometimes happens too, when you have two academy kids breaking through at the same time, there almost becomes a feeling like you need to pick who's the better one. You know what I mean? And like, they're both excellent in their own way, and I think it's great. Let me ask you a question that none of us want to consider, but there was a bid for Smith Rowe, or maybe there was a bid. There was a rumor of interest in Smith Rowe this summer from Villa. Realistically, I think it's very hard right now with the way the market is to understand what any player is worth, because there are only a few clubs that have any cash, and almost all of them are Premier League clubs. But every player has a value. The hardest thing in the world can be letting go of, the players you cherish the most. And Arsenal went through a lot of pain losing Fabregas and Nasri and Van Persie and, even Adebayor to some extent. And, there was that period where, even Alex Kleb, players were leaving and it was painful. But we sort of know, we've grown up to learn that like selling players can be the key to unlocking the future. I'll ask you sort of a dual question that's tricky. One is there a price that makes sense? I mean, there's always a price, but what do you sense is the value of these Hale kids, Smith Rowe and Saka in particular? And is it worth moving them on if that price is offered? Or do you think that the value of having these kids and the upside of them is so much that Arsenal should just plan to build around them and knock back any offer, whatever the size?
Oof, wow, you've put me on the spot there. I mean, like you said, the
funny thing is, I always sort of presume, if you get them, if someone comes with $100 million offer, you take it. But in this market, and you say, what does it get you, and where will these kids wind up? Like, there is an argument to be made for, building around core pieces, and they could certainly be it. But maybe that's short-sighted. I
mean, it's what you said. There is always a number, but what these two bring to Arsenal at the moment is more than just a potential financial gain. I think, I'm not saying they've done it alone, but they've played a significant contribution in our fortunes turning around. And I think they offer, what's the word that I'm looking for here? They help build a relationship between the fans and the players.
Absolutely.
Because as we mentioned before, these are your dreams and your everything you've wanted since you were 5 years old on the pitch right in front of you, and you're living through them. And I think what's the better feeling for me is that they seem completely committed to Arsenal and enjoying their football. I mean, Smith Rowe, when he scored against Villa the other day, he was there kissing the badge and holding the badge, and he just took a minute. He was by the corner flag and he just took a minute and he closed his eyes, and you could almost feel like Jesus, here, this is me right now doing this.
Yeah.
Scoring.
Realization of the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And against Spurs, we had the goal and assist from Smith Rowe. We had the goal and assist from Saka. And it just makes it so much better, like when you see these guys performing well and you saw them slide over to each other. And, I was speaking to Emile about this at breakfast yesterday. And it's like, these are kids. Yeah. These are kids. And they're, it's just, obviously, if someone comes in with like 150 or anything over 100, and I think the club would naturally consider it, because you'd be stupid not to. But like you said, in this market, in this kind of shortage of guaranteed world-class players that would actually come to Arsenal as well, let's not forget, at the moment, is it worth it? I don't know. For me, that kind of sentiment, that relationship, that kind of factor that they bring is arguably worth more than that money to Arsenal right now. I'm not saying. Yeah, I mean,
who would want to be a director of football, right?
Yeah, no, it's just so difficult. I mean, it's difficult for us because we're fans as well, so there will always be a sentiment attached.
Well, because let's be honest, Phil, you can step back and you'd be like, we're talking about guys that combined don't have more than 15 Premier League goals between them or whatever it is. So it's like, and again, that's not me knocking them down, but there comes a point where your Arsenal supporter hat and your fandom and your love for the kids has to crash up against the reality of like what we want to achieve and what their ceiling could be, and trying to project that. And it all gets very complicated. And like, honestly, I'm just really happy it's not my job, because I can sit back and just enjoy them.
Yeah. And if they do leave, then we can just fume about it on Twitter. So we have the easy job. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they really resemble a journey and the start of something new for this club, which for me at the moment brings more to the club and to the fans than money. That's just how I feel right now. Obviously, things can change. I mean, Saka's contract situation is a bit, we'll have to be there again soon. But, I just think for what they offer, not only on the pitch, but in terms of the general feeling, we're just super lucky to have them. And I'm really enjoying watching them come through and develop.
Yeah, well said. All right, last thing before we get out of here. Do you have any worries that Conte turned Spurs into a decent team, or is it the history of the Tottenham? They'll just be bad.
Well, I mean, there's always that, but I did the mistake of looking through their squad, and I thought, well, there's a few potential wing backs here, and these guys could be good in a back three. And oh, look, there's the Lukaku, Lautaro Martinez combination in Harry Kane and Heung-min Son. it just annoys me how they've stumbled upon him, you know, because he should be nowhere near that club.
Do you blame United?
Yeah, what are they doing? I mean, I don't care, because the longer Ollie's there, the better it is for us. But I'm just like, come on, he was begging for that job. Like, all, you know, when there was all that uncertainty over Ollie, it was like, oh yeah, he would be open to speaking to Man United, and you know, it's just like he was there ready for you, and I don't know why they're sticking with this guy, but
he'll have to dry his tears with the £20 million they're paying him.
Oh yeah, and it's all going to crash down eventually. They're going to sell someone, or they're going to have a fallout with Levy, and you know, the cycle continues. This is the Conte cycle. We know about Mourinho year 3, but this always happens with Conte as well. So, but I do have a couple of concerns. I'll whisper it. A couple. But you know, let's see what happens. For now, I'm happy with us, and we'll see what happens. But
I'm just glad, you know, maybe it all turns around now, maybe it doesn't. I'm just glad we got to live through Harry Kane getting booed by the Spurs fans.
Oh man, that was hilarious, wasn't
Brilliant.
It? I mean, Daniel Levy must be. You know, when people see like the dollar signs sometimes in their eyes, this like, what's the opposite of that? Just like depreciation right in front of him, decay. You know, every time he plays, he does not look like the 1% bothered. It's amazing. I love it. I love it. Spurs now.
Long may it continue, hopefully. Well, I better end this podcast before I just fall down face first in the desk here. So, Phil, as always, it's a pleasure. I look forward to doing the Euro roundups with or European football roundups with you on the Patreon side, and I hope everyone will check out the scouted football issue that you have out. Check out the artwork. It is absolutely sensational for Emile Smith Rowe, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. Phil's on Twitter @_Phil Costa. Thanks, Phil.
Cheers. Thank you so much. I mean, there'll be a couple of editions to give away as well. We'll give you guys some editions if you want to.
Just give me some information on that, and on the next pod, I'll do a contest. Sound good?
Absolutely. Perfect. Cheers for having me.
I don't have to deal with it now.
No worries. No worries at all. Go back to bed. Get back on the IV drip.
Yeah, there we go. We'll do.
The drip doctors. Yeah.
That's a different thing. Although, you know, also can be helpful when you're feeling good. Let's definitely stop talking, though. My name is Elliot Smith, Blackman, Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Should have an analytics pod coming for you from Scott in the near future over on the Patreon side. An instant reaction on Sunday after the Watford game, and then tons and tons of stuff coming out next week, including an interview Tim has done that'll be a lot of fun. So more to come. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10. Watford, no.